Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mentor Musings. I've got JC and Brett here with me as always. Hi, gentlemen. Good morning.
Hey, Dennis.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right. So this is part 3 of our 3-part series. In the first part, we talked about why you should or shouldn't go into business. In the second part, we talked about go-to-market strategies for B2B and B2C. In this one, we're going to drill down a little bit more on the sales part of your business. And JC and Brett, they both have different ideas, but very similar because B2B and B2C do have similar strategies, but both men are highly intelligent and very, very good at what they do. So listen in on these two gentlemen talk about sales.
That's because we listen to other people and their ideas as well.
Very true.
Right.
Yeah, we basically steal everybody else's good stuff and turn it into our own. That's
exactly. Or like at least refine our thinking, right? Be open to new ideas. And yeah, this is a really interesting topic to me because again, I grew up kind of in the B2B sales space, but doing my other podcast where I brought some science into the sales, like David Premier talks about, right? How, what the science of selling actually looks like and how it's changed, right? It's a lot of psychological, it's getting into the minds of your customers, but at the end of the day, it's still building that relationship. And so maybe what I'll touch on quickly is in the early days of a founder thinking, hey, I'm not a salesperson. There's no way I can do this. And I think you got to change that mindset. You know, I joke that sales finally caught up to me because I was never the used car salesman, right? I'm not a high pressure, do this now, discount, I'll give you 10% off. You sign today. That's not me. And frankly, that wouldn't work today anyway. And the way I like to frame it is, look, you're solving a problem for your potential customers, right? And they've got a pain point. Hopefully, as we talked earlier, you've identified a big enough pain point and a costly enough pain point that your solution is going to solve it. And at the end of the day, there's a cost to solving that problem. And this is what we charge, to solve that problem. It's overly simplistic, but I think we lose sight of the fact of what selling actually is. And if you're providing a value and you truly believe in what your product or service is doing, it's just got a price tag with it. So I think sometimes founders really get caught up in the pricing of this, not even with the pricing, but asking for the deal or charging for the deal, and that's uncomfortable. And so I think the earlier in the process you get to, hey, it's just, I'm providing a value and this is what this value costs in order to do this. And if you don't like it, or it doesn't work for you, no harm, no foul, easier said than done when you're scrambling in the early days. But I think taking that approach and understanding that and not thinking of it as sales will help you with the mindset that's going to allow you to have better conversations, better listening, and we can get all the other tactics. But I think that's the biggest one, is just a mindset shift on it. You're not selling, you're providing value, and there's a cost for that value. Jason.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And it's, by the way, a lot of what Brett and I are going to talk about are going to apply both to B2B and B2C. One example of this is exactly what Brett said, which is, when you're making these initial sales, a lot of times you're not so much selling your solution, you're kind of evangelizing or championing a problem. Right. And a lot of sales, whether it's with direct to consumer or, businesses, starts with making sure that you're framing the problem for them correctly. Right. And so one of the general things that I always talk about for founders that I work with is, look, there are 3 types of sales, right? These are the 3 types of sales, pretty much every industry sector, B2B, B2C, doesn't matter. There are direct sales. That's where your customer has a specific awareness of a problem and wants a specific solution to that problem, and you offer that specific solution. Okay, direct. Consultative sales, that's where your customer has an awareness of the problem, but they are unsure or open to a myriad of solutions that could solve that problem. A lot of times they can be very different, right? And then the third and probably the hardest, but also the most powerful form of sales are disruptive sales, or what can be called insight selling. That's where your customer comes to you and has a problem, and is looking for, kind of like in the consultative scenario, a myriad of solutions, but you disrupt their thinking and actually change the problem altogether. And it can go beyond just reframing the problem in a different way. I mean, literally completely disrupting their level of thinking. Like, hey, yes, that is important, but actually there's a different problem that you need to focus in on. And maybe that, the problem that you're looking at is sort of under the umbrella of this other problem that you're going to present. All 3 are viable. But I think before you engage in selling and helping frame the problem, like Brett was talking about, understanding, are you going to be engaging in more direct, consultative, or potentially, disruptive sales is going to be really, really important.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that because I think a simple phrase again, but different is better than being better, right? You cannot convince a customer you're better. Do not compete on price, right? If your solution is your only advantage is you can do it cheaper, you're not going to win. If you got to find out what that differentiator is, which is your disruptor, right, JC? It's got to be why, because the other thing I'll add on to that, so you have to be different. But I'd say 8 out of 10 times when you're pitching a customer or a prospect, most of the time they do nothing, right? It's not like they're going with a competitive product. So you're not only competing against who else is in your space, but it's also the customer not changing the way they're doing things. So I think that's an important distinction because, hey, I know your technology can change it, but my spreadsheets are working just fine, right? I don't need to invest. And so I think it's having that broader why this is different, why it's so important to solve this problem. And then, understanding the benefit, not only going head to head with competitors, is to do nothing is your biggest enemy most of the time.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, the way that I'll phrase it with founders and entrepreneurs that I work with is your customer initiated into your problem or they uninitiated, right? And by the way, those two on a spectrum exist in every marketplace, right? And so when you're engaging and thinking about, okay, how does my solution stack up? What Brett's talking about, where there's kind of the do nothing competitor, right? We're not going to change. We're just going to ignore this. That might be a target customer that is more uninitiated, right? Into the problem that you're trying to solve, or the way that you're trying to solve it, or the way that you're framing the problem. So another useful, kind of framework of understanding is, hey, is my target market that I'm going after more on the initiated side of the scale? They're aware of this problem. They're prioritizing this problem, or are they uninitiated? Are they completely oblivious to this? Or are they just sort of accepting that, like, yeah, this is the way it is, and I'm going to do it with something else because I have other things to worry about. So again, just kind of another layer of analysis and framework to go through. And then one other thing I'll mention specifically on the B2C side is you can feel like you want to get compelled to go after the group that's the biggest. So I'm going to go after the initiated or the uninitiated, or I'm going to go after direct, consultative, or disruptive sales because one of those opens up a bigger pool of potential customers. And I understand, like, total addressable market and service obtainable market and all of that, really important. You want to start with a big number so you can find a bigger, kind of fractionalized number that becomes what you own. But in the B2C space, there's this compelling idea that in order to be successful, you have to have millions and millions of customers, right? The truth of the matter is that you can have a very, very successful, very valuable business worth hundreds of millions of dollars in the direct-to-consumer space, only selling to tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands max. So just because any of you out there that are focused on direct-to-consumer, don't think that what we're telling you means, okay, I need to do this to go after the biggest part of the market. That's a misnomer. I mean, it might be true. It might be that you want to target a really big denominator, a really big pool, but don't get caught up in kind of the false law of big numbers. Sometimes small numbers are even better, even in the direct-to-consumer space.
Yeah, 100%. And Dennis, watch this. I'm going to tie it back to the last episode, back to the initiated versus uninitiated, why it's so important to get known, right? Get your brand, the value out there, how how prospects are solving this problem, whether your solution or not. Because then when it becomes time, you're dealing with more initiated people. Then, man, if you have to create awareness and help them understand what the problem is, you're working really, really, really hard to do that. And sometimes there's just no ways around it. You're going to have to fight that battle. But it comes back to, hey, how do the bigger universe, and I love your point, JC, on focus on some niches first, right? Riches in the niches. And you get really good in those certain areas, and then you can expand. So anyway, thought you'd be happy to tie that back, Dennis.
Oh yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. In comedy, we'll call that a callback. So riches in the niches. I love that. That's a great saying.
It's so simple, but yet so powerful if you can execute it against it.
So I also kind of want to tie in one last thing real quick. And although your product and service is great, And that differentiating factor from being able to compete with other people is that you're selling yourself, who you are as a person, and that development, like self-development, is very important when you're trying to move your business forward. Do you two agree or disagree with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, JC, I can see you nodding your head. So
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think it's not always going to be the case, especially in the direct to consumer space. Your personal brand may not be directly commingled with the product, although often that is the case. But yeah, as a general rule, whatever it is that you're selling, and by the way, you're not only selling your product, you could be selling yourself to investors, you could be selling yourself to potential other partners and stakeholders and affiliate partners. There's always a personal element to it, which for some entrepreneurs is a huge advantage, right? Because they have just this natural or innate ability to do that. For others, it's extremely daunting. I mean, I know entrepreneurs who dread the idea of having to kind of sell based on their personal brand. They want the product or the service itself to stand alone, and they don't want to be built to that. Speaking from personal experience, just in my own companies, I can tell you this. It's a great advantage if you align it well, but there is a bottleneck. You don't want to become so beholden to kind of founder-driven sales that when it comes time to scale beyond that, that you can't, or that you struggle with that. So, embrace it, even if it's something that you're not comfortable with earlier on. Embrace selling based on your personal brand, but have yourself an off-ramp to that. Doesn't mean that you'll ever get completely out of that, but you can't let the scalability of this thing be beholden, because like we've talked about on previous episodes, if you do that, you're going to be working in your business way longer than you can start working on your business, right? So don't be this critical failure or success point in your business development process, because you're never going to be able to step away from it if that's the case. But that doesn't mean that you can't use your personal brand, especially earlier on, to be able to close those first deals.
Yeah, and interesting. I'll piggyback off that a little bit, because one of the things that I'm seeing in the B2B space more and more is the necessity of tying your personal brand to the company you're building, right? The customers and prospects want to know the story. They want to know the why you started this company, or why you're solving this problem. And it's kind of got two advantages of doing that. One is future employees you bring on, they have to be bought in right into the mission and the vision of why you're doing this. If they're not sold on the why you're doing this, there's no way they're going to be able to sell that or communicate that with customers. And I'm just seeing, I had a guest on the podcast, Marty Sanchez, the rise of the inbound CEO. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, these personal and lifestyle brands, right? That the owner, the founder of the company, no, man, it's becoming a commonplace in these high growth B2B companies. So if you're not comfortable in front of the camera, that's okay, but you've got to get your point of view out there, either in written interviews, however it is. It's almost become the cost of doing business if you want to grow, because people do want to understand what your story is. All things being considered, they're going to buy. Well, we talk about customer experience, so that's a whole different story. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to circle back on this sometime, because I was wondering if it was, hey, maybe just the folks that I'm interviewing, that happens to be who they are and it's content. But no, I think it's beyond a coincidence that these high growth B2B companies are being built around the founder's story or their mission of why they're doing it. So sorry, I took us off on a tangent a little bit there, but at some point we should come back and dig into this.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree. I think we should definitely circle back to that at some point. So thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you definitely every single week. You guys are awesome. And I appreciate you as well listening in on our episodes. So subscribe, like, send to your friends, send it to your mom, to anybody. I don't care, but just share. And we'd love to get your feedback as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And everybody, take care.
Thanks, guys. Thanks,
guys.
Great weekend.